Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome progressive from the great state of New Jersey, Jason Krychiw. How you doing, Jason?
I am good, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for taking some time to chat with me. We're going to talk about two things, right? So when I first invited you on, it was to kind of as a representative from the Progressive Democrats of New Jersey, which you're a co-chair and you've sort of one of the originators of that organization. I want to ask about the history of that. But as of today, you've thrown your hat into the ring for New Jersey State Senate District 20, I believe, and congratulations on that. And I want to focus on your candidacy as well. So
great
day.
Yeah.
Great day to have you on. Awesome. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Progressive Democrats of New Jersey. Can you just share like the origins of that? I know it's a relatively recent organization, maybe 2 years old or so. Can you talk about how that started and what kind of the infrastructure looks like?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, Progressive Democrats of New Jersey, as a state organization, is relatively young. We kind of formalized a statewide group earlier in 2020, back in around February or March, which presented some challenges with everything going on with COVID. So good or bad timing depending on how you look at it. But yeah, the actual idea for the organization and kind of where it started was here in Union County in New Jersey, where I'm from. This was coming off of the 2019 primary election. A lot of people had run as, off the line progressive challengers to the typical machine incumbent candidates. And we had varying successes in respective towns all around our county. And kind of coming off of that, a lot of the people said, well, we made some good headway as individuals in our own towns. Why don't we come together and try to form this progressive network that focuses on electoral politics specifically? Because, you have a lot of great organizations like Our Revolution and others who, they focus on organizing and activism a lot. And we wanted to do something that was specifically electoral. Building a bench of progressive candidates and getting them into office. And so, like I said, a lot of the people from around the county where I'm from came together with that in mind. And we formed that county chapter back in the summer of 2019. We worked on a lot of different progressive campaigns, going into the primary cycle from this past year. We met a lot of great organizations. We grew a lot in that county. And kind of from that, people and organizers and activists around the state saw what we were doing here and said, hey, how do we do something like that in this county? And, even back when we had kind of started the Union County chapter, we thought that maybe one day, 2-3 years down the line, we could get a chapter somewhere else, or, we would do enough to get people to want to join up. And that ended up being 2 or 3 months down the line. So back in March of this year, we launched officially as a statewide organization where, to this point, we have about half of the counties in New Jersey have chapters in the organization now. All, like I said, kind of around that same goal of electoral politics for progressives and just in general fighting for racial, social, economic, and environmental justice. That's kind of our organizational purpose. We do that by, recruiting candidates, finding people to run for office who champion those things, and give them the resources and the tools to run for office in and around the state.
That's awesome. So you're, before we get to your race, so part of that would include, identifying candidates, probably endorsing them and so forth, right? And, let me just ask, is there, obviously the platform that you are fighting for, you just kind of mentioned it, racial, social, economic, environmental justice, right? And everything that fits into that. But, we live in this interesting time where people have cynically tried to steal the word progressive, right? Joe Biden says he's, Nancy Pelosi said she's, you get what I'm getting at, right? So talk about, sort of contending with that, whereas you're, in a lot of instances, in your case specifically, I imagine you're going to be sort of challenging the establishment Democratic Party. How are you going to sort of fight that branding, if you will?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We at PDNJ, something we always say is how one of the most dangerous things to the progressive movement is just that. It's kind of the dilution of what that word means by people
Right,
who
right,
are really no way progressive.
right.
Are just kind of adopting things to appear that way. I mean, I think a good example of that is over this past year, Black Lives Matter seemed to enter more of a, I guess, common vocabulary for a lot of Democratic politicians. When if you go back maybe 1 or 2 years ago, these same candidates and politicians wouldn't touch that phrase or organization with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Um, and so I think that's really the way to combat it, is to kind of hold people accountable for their records, and to be able to highlight that a lot of these politicians we have now are reactive, that they are maybe getting on board to things that progressives have been calling for years, if not decades, in the last couple of months or years. And if you look at their records, the way they have voted, the topics they have either championed or in most cases avoided outright, you can see who is a progressive and who is a progressive, a faux
Right.
aggressive, as I like to call them sometimes. And and so that's something that that I try to do, that we EDNJ try to do, is be unapologetically progressive. We're not gonna mince words or engage in transactional politics, in order to get ahead, because to me and to us, it's you know it's about the fact that if you look around the state and the country, that people can't wait for those justices that we talked about. They can't wait for healthcare and jobs and affordable housing, especially in this last year. I think the pandemic has highlighted the stark difference there, between the kind of political elites and the wealthier and everybody else. And so, that's our whole mantra, is that we're not going to engage in transactional politics. We're not going to play around with policy and be, take half measures,
Right.
because half measures aren't helping the people who need our help the most.
Here, here. Well said. Another egregious example of that is someone says healthcare is a right, and then they proceed to not talk about it as a guaranteed right. They say,
Mhm.
everyone deserves access. Healthcare is a right. Everyone deserves access, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of speaking out of both sides of their mouth. So, you know,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, and like you said, that's sort of been that framing has been embraced cynically to gaslight people. So I like that you're principled on the policy, and that it's amazing that you built such a movement in such a short amount of time, and in a solidly blue state, and hopefully Godspeed, it'll continue. I want to pull up the website in a minute, but how can what are the frontline issues that you're working on now, and how can people get involved?
Yeah. So a lot of the things we've done so far, have been around, issues that will help electorally, mainly kind of issue advocacy that will help here. One of them, and you'll see it on the website there too. Something we started was a no police money pledge. Was asking politicians who are elected now, to refuse, uh, police union PBA money and donations, and also asking voters and residents to not support candidates who accept funding from that, because just like anything else, you get these candidates who take money from corporations and then will typically sell out to those corporations, or money from the military industrial complex. It's very similar with police. Those unions and those kind of strong backing money groups. How can you expect politicians to fairly legislate about police issues and criminal justice and people's rights, when a large portion of it is coming from these groups? And you mentioned New Jersey being this solidly blue state, but because of that, it almost gives the incumbent Democrats here, the ability to masquerade as Democrats more easily, because
Mm,
there's really not any other challenge.
yeah,
Over the last couple of decades, the Democrats in the state have actually taken more in funding from police unions than Republicans. Um, And that's typical of most issues there. Another thing that we were involved in recently was Progressive Democrats of New Jersey was a coalition partner in what was called the NJ Can 2020 initiative, which was the cannabis legalization referendum that we just had on our ballot in November. And it passed overwhelmingly. Our group was happy to kind of be part of that coalition with the ACLU and other cannabis advocates to push for that legalization. And now actually the fight we're kind of involved in is that the bill that's coming out of it, which has gone through a lot of revisions because of activist voices on it, where there was no criminal justice component, there was no clear expungement component. And that obviously is one of the most important parts of legalization, if not the most important part of it. So we've been working on those two things a lot, and then probably what our organization to this point is best known for, and what's going on right now, is we've been helping support a federal lawsuit that was filed in New Jersey against our ballot design here. It's kind of a little known secret of the New Jersey ballot, that our candidates and our the parties and the tickets are lined up in these ballot lines. So what happens is the incumbent kind of establishment political machine candidates will get preferential placement on the ballot, all line up together. And, they then can kind of run on their ballot line letter. A vote for column A, vote for this team. We're the real Democrats. We're this. And what it has allowed to happen is that these incumbents don't run on merits. They don't run on their records. They don't run on policy. They run on, this is the best line. We're right here on the ballot. Vote for us here, because it's easy, and that's what good voters do. Right. And so the lawsuit that came up, that was filed, is about the unconstitutional makeup of the ballot, that it is against freedom of speech, freedom of association, in the way that you have to fall in, kind of literally fall in line with other candidates to get in a good spot on the ballot. No other state in the country is set up this way. They typically have bubble ballots, or it's set up by candidates. Right. And so that is something that, as Progressive Democrats of New Jersey, we set up an associated entity, the Legal Defense Fund, which you can find on our website, that has been collecting money to help pay for, to spread awareness about it and things like that. So those are a couple of the initiatives we're involved in. If you go on the site that you can see right here, njprogressives.com, you can see all the initiatives. You can see ways how to get involved, contact us, donate to support these pushes and these pledges, even if you're not in the area. And yeah, that's what we've been working on. I think, to your point you brought up before of why we've been able to grow so much in such a short amount of time, is because we've really, hit the ground running, and we've kind of walked the walk and made sure that we had some advocacy and some candidates and some actual action items behind what we're just saying, and really kind of living those values.
That's really great. Yeah, this so as this slideshow is scrolling through, that's the abolish the line. That's the voting thing that Jason was just describing here. So you can donate specifically to that and learn more about that. Yeah, I remember early on, and I talked to Hector Oseguera, and I think he explained that, and I think he was at a disadvantage, right? Like you said, depending where you are on the ballot, it disadvantages the non-incumbent or the challenger, the non-establishment candidate, if you will. Yeah. So that's incredible that you do that. So, you mentioned a website is njprogressives.com, and it's not used cynically. This is an organization that puts your money where your mouth is, like Jason just said. So, please sign up, make some donations on these causes that speak to you. Here's the metrics. You have 8 chapters around the state, which is, I guess about half the counties in the state, right?
Yeah, we have 8 formally set up. There's 21 counties in the state. We have 8 formally set up, and we have a couple more in the pipeline. So we're growing slowly but surely.
That's so great. Over 200 members, and here's the donation total. So yeah, they're fighting the frontline issues. So get involved in njprogressives.com. Now I want to shift gears and talk about you and your race, right? So check out njprogressives.com, make a donation. But also, Jason announced today that he's running for state senate, New Jersey District 20. And I'll pull up a map of the district here in a moment. But I understand you ran for public office before, and you've obviously been working on a lot of these frontline issues, electoral politics, and so forth. What inspired you to make the jump from sort of activist to potential legislator?
Yeah, well, my background actually is completely different than kind of politics and organizing. It's in research science. I went to school for microbiology, and I worked in a research lab for 6 years. And really, what got me into that was, obviously I was interested in science, but I also wanted to help people. As cliche as that might sound, I wanted to cure disease and discover new things to help people out. And it got to a point where, I was in a lab for, like I said, 6 years. And one day I was sitting there, and it was this literally windowless lab, where I was writing grants and not really doing any research. And I thought to myself, I'm not really helping anybody doing this. And,
Right.
I want to get involved, on the front lines and get involved on the ground. And that's how I first kind of started just becoming aware of local politics, of things in my town. I'm born and raised in the district I am running in now. I've been here my whole life. And so what got me involved back then locally is the same thing that is kind of making me now take a jump to running for state senate, is that, the businesses that I went to as a little kid to patronize are the same ones I'll talk to now, where I see they're struggling to keep the doors open, especially during this pandemic that hit small businesses so hard. Or the people who I grew up with, or the people who were my teachers when I were younger, are now having difficulty finding work or paying their rent or mortgages. Again, I think highlighted even more by this pandemic recently. And that's what, we've been fighting at PDNJ. It's what I had been fighting locally when I was running for office here, for local seats and things like that. And, it's why now, especially with things that are going on, I have my background in science, like I said, I have my experience on the political part of it. And I think we need people like that to in the state house here, making these decisions about not just the pandemic response and relief and prevention in the future, but to actually help all the people who are most affected by all the issues that have come out of it, losing healthcare, their jobs, and loved ones, and their own lives in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I get into how terrible the incumbent is, and I want to ask you about that and so forth, and pull up your map, but just in general, sort of tie in your work with PDNJ and your previous runs and running now. We're at a lot of filing deadlines and stuff, right? So, some people think, I can't run, or I shouldn't run, or, I have skeletons, or, there are barriers of entry, right? Can you assuage those? Like what are the most common ones, and how can we inspire anybody watching this to run for something?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up PDNJ, because I think kind of our mission with that is exactly that, is that, running for office is scary. It's not easy to do, both just from like a personal standpoint, but then also just logistically. Even the people who say, I want to run for office, that's kind of the last step people get to, because, the way government is and states and are set up, you usually can't jump on Google and look up, how do I run for this position, and actually get the legal and everything else definitions of how to do that.
Right.
So, like for me, it was trial by fire. I was calling up my my county clerk and my other representatives who would answer the calls, and asking them every day, am I doing this correctly? When is this thing due? How do I do this? And, at the time it was not fun or easy. I think looking back and looking at now, it has helped me really grasp that whole system. But then I meet other people who have run for office, and they didn't even know some of that, or they knew different things than I did. And that's part of what I think as PDNJ we're trying to do is really take people from I want to run for office to okay, you're running. Like run and what things do you need to do to even get on the ballot? Then, how do you canvass? How do you build out your campaign staff? How do you talk to voters? How do you build your platform? And then if and when people win, how do you actually legislate now? How do you lead and kind of stay true to those values? So, it can be intimidating at first, but they're the information there. Um, and yeah, that might sound like a generic answer, but you might not be able to get the most specific things, but you can look up your county clerks, your state election offices, and through email requests or phone requests. I mean, that information is public. We as people and residents and voters have a right to all of that stuff. And so I think that's really the main thing, is that when you make that choice to get off the sideline and get involved, you have to be ready to ask those questions and get that info, because people will think they're alone in wanting to run, or in maybe even wanting change sometimes. But I found out when I ran, and I've seen other countless people say to me too, and I think if there are people wanting this who want to run for any office, you'll find it the same way, that you're not the only one thinking like this. You're not the only one who think we need change, and people will help you. They will volunteer their expertise or their time or their money and donations in some cases to help you make that change. So it's just about kind of taking that first step and getting involved and learning by doing, in a way.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I'm assuming PDNJ has resources. If people reach out, you can offer guidance and information and so forth.
Yeah, we have a whole staff of directors who specialize in things like field and communications and education and training for candidates. So that is our goal at the end of the day. It is taking people from start line of I might want to run for office to that finish line of inauguration day and beyond, really.
That's great. Yeah. So if you're thinking of running, reach out to PDNJ. Don't reach out to Raytheon. That's not who you need to reach out to. Reach out
No.
to progressives, right? So let me pull up your website again here, if I can. It's jason4statesenate.com. It's New Jersey 20. Obviously, you don't take corporate PAC money, so grassroots funded campaign donation button is right here on the top right. So, jason4statesenate.com. Just announced today, campaigns like this, grassroots funded campaigns, the more money you get up front, the more beneficial it is. So, getting on a race like this, backing Jason, can go a long way. I know, we're all exhausted from 2020 and the election cycle, but, these elections don't end, right? We need to stay in the fight, and, we need to, get guys like Jason on the front lines to implement, affect positive change like you outlined. And I'll ask a little bit about your policy and incumbent, but I always like to give people a chance to brag on their district. So, and pull up a map to show where it is, because they're gerrymandered like crazy, right? So, brag on New Jersey 20. Tell us what's great about it. What do we need to know about it?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm born and raised here in Union Township, which is one of the four municipalities in this district. So it's Union, Elizabeth, which is the largest city in the district and one of the largest cities in the state, and then also Hillside and Roselle. So it's not a very large district geographically, but it is a very densely populated one. Because of that, it makes for a great place to live and grow up. The area is extremely diverse, so you get a lot of diversity in the people. I went to the public school system here, which is, at the time when I was there, was one of the best in the state. And, I really benefited from that diversity in my classmates and kind of learning different backgrounds and cultures and getting to see that play out in our businesses here too. You can walk down one block in town and there's an Italian place and a Latin fusion place and a Vietnamese place and a Korean barbecue place, all within, all within walking distance. at
Fascinating.
like the one downtown area. So yeah, I mean the diversity in all those ways is really great here. And because it's kind of small and compact, you can go from one end to the other pretty quickly if you feel like visiting other towns for all their different businesses or people there. It is a very great place to grow up. I will say biased. I enjoyed growing up here and living here now, obviously, and yeah, it's a great place to live, and I am proud to be representing the area.
Amazing. That's great. I always like to hear the reverence people have for, because it's indicative of why you're running, right? You're running for a love of the community, and like you said, in your previous career, because you want to help people, right? There's nothing cheesy about that. It's it's something to be proud of, and so wear proudly. I'm remembering Hector Oseguera ran for the House seat, and I think before we talk, this is a little bit in his district, and I don't know if this is an issue you're going to come up against, but I remember him talking about waterfront property and tax abatements, and there's a real estate lobby. Is that this waterfront area in your district as well? Is that something that the incumbent is in bed with, the real estate lobby?
Well, so Hector Oseguera, he was in CD 8, I think it was, which is only a small part of this district of this part of Union County, but mostly up in like Hudson County, which is right across from New York.
Okay,
So that's typically the main waterfront issues are up there.
gotcha.
But that is not to say that there are not those development issues here too. Just like you mentioned, the tax abatements for these luxury apartments going in what is a mostly blue collar district.
Right.
They're not being built for us, but they're being paid for by us because those companies aren't paying any taxes. Those developers aren't paying any taxes. And you can do a quick election finance search to probably see who those developers are because they're most of the time donating to the incumbents who are here anyway.
So can you explain that a little bit more? Like I learned about it when talking to Hector. So talk about what those abatements are and what you just said. We pay for them, but we don't benefit from them. Can you explain that a little bit more to anyone that might be in sort of the more densely populated areas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so New Jersey in general is the densest, most densely populated state in the country. And then within the state, there are pockets like this district up by Jersey City, Hoboken area, and others that are very densely populated metropolitan areas. And because of that, land and development area is very hard to come by. You have to pay a lot of money, or in some cases, know the right people. I'll say it that way, to be able to build and do those kind of things. And I can speak a little bit to just my specific town and Union in this district. Over the past, I would say maybe 5 years, there have been at least 4 or 5 complexes that have gone up with between 1 and 2,000 unit occupancy at these places. A lot of them are not full to capacity, but other ones continue to pop up. And every time they pop up, number one, like I was saying before, they are luxury. These are places that are charging 2,500 and up for single units. And in this specific district that is very working class, it is very blue collar. It's frankly, they're not being built for us. They're not being built for people who live here because very few people I know who grew up here or who live here now can afford to live in a place like that. And so instead of making things concerted efforts to make them more affordable housing, these luxury developments go up, and they will get open-ended tax abatements that last in some cases for decades. I think one of the ones that went up recently got a 30-year tax abatement. And actually this one that got that abatement was built on what was previously an industrial site. So it was a site that was at the time creating jobs. They were in a different tax bracket because they were an industrial zone, not a residential or a development zone. And so it was a place that provided jobs. It was a place that provided taxes for the municipality.
Right.
Got replaced by luxury apartments that people can't afford, not paying their fair share in taxes. in a way being hubs for commuters to kind of outsource jobs away from the area.
Right.
And so really you're just reversing all of those trends one after another. It's pushing people out of the district. Our property taxes continue to go up because these larger developers that should be kind of shouldering these payments are not paying anything. And that falls onto us. And that's the short end of the straw that, the working class people of this area get stuck with when they kind of make these developer deals and they give these tax abatements away.
Yeah, thanks for going into it a little bit more. So before I get to the incumbent, and I'm going to ask if he takes that money, I'm going to guess he does. You do not. Grassroots funded campaign, Jason4, statesenate.com. Please go make a donation. So the incumbent, I'm going to take a wild guess. I didn't do any research on this. I'm going to guess he takes money from the real estate lobby and he contributed to that abatement that you just outlined.
You would be correct. Yeah, he takes money from anything like that. Developers, large corporations. This is a person who, in the not so recent past, served as the sheriff of this county and took donations from private prisons. So that's what his financial report looks like.
Wow. Can you talk about specifically? So taking money from private prisons, taking money from the real estate lobby, I'm assuming the police union. Can you cite just an example of how his donors, I'll call them bribes, how his donors have contributed to him failing New Jersey 20?
Yeah, so I would say actually the main thing, and this is kind of in the news in New Jersey more because of an ICE facility in one of the other counties that Hector is actually from. There is an ICE detention facility in Union County in this district here. They do business with the county, they do business with the state, and as our leaders, my opponent, has been in the state house, has been sheriff, and is now state senator. Kind of a combination of the three over the past 15 to 20 years about. And so these are things that happen on his watch. And you get calls to shut down the ICE detention centers. You get calls to, end those contracts. You get calls to, defund police and reallocate money from those kind of things back to the community. And those are things that people like him are completely silent on. And like I mentioned, if you go look at his finance reporting and filing, you'll see donations from private prisons. You'll see donations from developers and landowners who own some of these facilities and places people are asking to be shut down. So it's not even like he'll go out and even humor people or say he's working on it or doing anything like that. It's silence. We're met with nothing. So, you, in a way, you might even be able to call that hush money, those kind of donations, that donations these incumbents get, these people get, they don't end up speaking out about these things at the end of the day, where this money is coming from. So, they can classify it as whatever it wants, but that's what it seems like a little bit. And that goes back to, like the PDNJ police no money pledge and other things like that, is that, it's not just about, corporations or banks or things like that. All of these kind of sectors that pay for access or pay to silence voters or people who live in these areas, to let people do that. It's been on tons of issues for, like I said, going over on decades at this point.
Yeah. Boy, I don't want to keep you too long. I'd love to have you back on. The election, the primary is in June, you said, right? June
8th, yeah, 2021.
Right. But let me, so I'd love to have you back on and talk a little bit more about policy and platform, and just specifically about your campaign, maybe in the spring. So, but before I let you go, I hinted at it earlier that we have, everyone's got Trump fatigue, no doubt, right? And we just went through that cycle. So, that's going to be a challenge for people running. You running this race is, getting those those brunch Democrats that are like, oh, it's, we got Joe Biden. It's okay. It's a guy. He's a Democrat. He's, it's blue. We got nothing to worry about. And they just go back to their business. How are you going to reach them? How are you going to motivate them to, to stay in the fight, to actually, build on progress? It's not just Republicans that are corrupt, right? How do you get that message out to, to the brunch Democrat audience? And you know what I mean when I say that, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said. I think the method is almost in the reasoning you just laid out, and we mentioned it before that New Jersey is a very blue state overall, and this district is very blue. But we have multiple ICE detention facilities in the state, as small as New Jersey. We have some of the, per capita, the most ICE detention facilities for the area that we're in. And this is a solidly blue state. People might not even think twice about that. And that's just one example of a number of examples of why, yeah, we just got Trump out of the White House, but we can't allow the other Trumps to exist in our state house. We can't allow them to exist in our town halls, because you don't get the Trump types and the, even like the other neoliberal types at the presidential level. They had to start somewhere. And this is where they started. So if we want to make changes at those uppermost levels and at a federal level, we have to start at the local level and the state level. I mean, it's something that I used to say when I would run locally, is that, Barack Obama didn't decide which one of the roads in your town were getting paved, and Donald Trump didn't decide what your property taxes were. That's stuff that is controlled locally, that is controlled by our municipal governments and our county governments and our state governments. And so the idea, I think, is to just kind of stress those things. And the fact that, like you said, a lot of these incumbents, I think, are counting on the fact that people are fatigued. They count on those low turnout numbers to be able to have carte blanche and do nothing and show up a couple months before the election with a glossy mailer listing all of their great accomplishments. When if you look at their record over the last couple of years in between the time they got inaugurated to when their election is coming up, you could see that, especially in New Jersey, which is mostly blue, a lot of the policies they back, you would think were being put up by Republicans in some of the cases. And I think that's the idea behind it, is to educate people on the fact that this is what's happening in our state, educate them on how we can change this, and then just build that excitement, build that energy back up, and say that this fight isn't done. And I know we're all tired and we are frustrated and annoyed. And trust me, I am also all of those things. But they count on us to quit. And the way that we hold them accountable is to not give up and hold them to those ropes and go the full rounds, because eventually we will win. Grassroots and energy and organizing always wins out in the end. As long as we are relentless and unapologetic about that. And that is what this campaign is going to be about.
God, I love it. Yeah, amazing. It reminds me of is, so Joe Cryan, like you said, they sort of rely on apathy and they rely on not showing up and just being slick at the last minute. It's AOC and Knock Down the House with Joe Crowley with the mailer that didn't have the election date on it, right? She was out there engaging people. She was knocking on doors. The momentum is with the people when you engage them, right? So yeah, let's repeat that with Jason in New Jersey's 20. So it's jason4statesenate.com. Again, he doesn't take corporate PAC money. You're not going to get in office and then suddenly start taking money from, Bristol Myers Squibb or GSK or General Dynamics or anything. So this, we need a deep progressive bench, and I'm starting to say this on these Daily Bern episodes. Bernie Sanders ignited something in 2016 and it opened a lot of eyes that won't be lulled back asleep, right? But we need to build. He's just one guy and he's not going to be around forever. We need to build a deep and broad bench with guys like Jason, on these local races and state races. I think it's incredible. So, Godspeed for your campaign. Like I said, please come back in the spring. We'll talk a little bit more about policy. We didn't get too much into that, but check out Progressive Democrats in New Jersey. Sign up for a local chapter if there's not one in your county. you be the one to create one. And then go to jason4statesenate.com and make a donation. I'm going to close out on an ad. You just announced today, so I kind of happy to have you on today.
Good timing.
Exclusive for me, right? So I'm going to close out on your launch video, which is about 2 minutes, and it's a wonderful piece, and it gives a great profile of Jason. So check him out. Go like his socials. Share this video if you know anybody in New Jersey, even if they're not an NJ20. Share this video. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me today, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. I really appreciate you having me on, and I would love to come back to talk more policy and get into that later on. Next year.
Peace. Looking forward to it. So stick around for Jason's ad here. Thank you for watching.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. I was born and raised in Union County. My family has been here for 3 generations. I attended the public schools right here in the district. Growing up, my family always taught me the importance of community. And my parents always told me to help others first and to stand up for what you believe in. So I went to Rutgers to study to become a scientist because I wanted to help my community. I worked in a research lab for over 6 years, studying and classifying new types of viruses to better understand them and learn how to cure them. I felt like that wasn't enough, so I became an educator at Kane University, teaching hundreds of students, loving every second of it, but I still felt like I could do more. I've been here my entire life, and it's always been the same story. I look around and I see struggling working families, social injustice. Nothing has changed. At a certain point, we have to ask ourselves why that is. We have to ask ourselves, are we really being represented? We're in a pandemic. People are fighting for their livelihood, and where's the relief? We need to deliver on healthcare, housing, wages. We need help, and we need it now. Only we understand our struggle. We know what it means to be the little guy. We know what it means to be neglected. A person who takes corporate money, who sells out their community, and who spends more time worrying about their own power than the needs of struggling families cannot possibly represent us. Working people deserve a champion that will fight for them at all costs. Someone who we know will put working families first. Politics was never in the cards for me, but this isn't about me. It's about we, and we deserve better, period. My name is Jason Krychiw, and I'm running for state senate to give a real voice to our community. Will you join me?